communities. So that's all that I do. I've been doing this. I've been in the business for over 30 years. My company is 12 years old. So if anybody has any questions about senior housing and needs any advice, please reach out to me. I'm also a resource for people. And so in addition to providing advice for people with senior housing, I try to be a resource. And so these webinars that I do, which is every week, is my way to reach out to everybody and be an educational resource for people. And so today we have one of my close friends and colleague, and it's a great honor to have Ed Wollman with us, and I'll talk to him about it a little bit. But just before I end today, just know that next week I'm doing a webinar on the ABCs of CCRCs. So if you're curious about sort of the inner workings of the CCRCs, which is a continuing care retirement community, please join us next week on the webinar. I'll send everybody a link to that. So today we have Ed Wollman, and it's a great pleasure and honor to have Ed join us today. If you don't know, Ed is a Florida Bar Board Certified Wills and Trust Estates Attorney. He started the law firm Wollman, Gerke and Associates 26 years ago. Their main office is located on the corner of Vanderbilt Beach and Airport Road. Their firm currently has 7 attorneys, which focuses on estate planning, elder law, real estate, guardianship, and probate. In addition to running the law firm, Ed also consults on philanthropy, life insurance, and art. And I got to say, when I started my business 12 years ago, Ed has been with me all those 12 years, and we've been working very closely together. I feel I'm one of the spokes on one of his wheels, and so it's just great privilege, and I've been really looking forward to having Ed join us today. I know everybody's very curious about all the information you're going to share with us. So Ed, the show is yours.
Thank you very much, Bruce. So as I said earlier, we've got to stay safe. Obviously, with the coronavirus and everything, we need to stay safe. So if you do come to the office, which we are all working from home, except for a handful of staff, we are doing everything we can to follow the rules, and we all wear masks in the conference room. And this is a designer mask from our friend Joe Genta, the clothier that dresses all of us. So if anybody needs a designer mask, I can tell you where to get them, friend of mine. Anyway, I'm here by myself. I've been at home for the last 8 weeks. As you all know, I haven't had a desk in my office in about 20 years. I go to conferences, I hand the file back to my staff, and I don't have that never do pile, that bureaucratic pile that just builds up on your desk. So I live in the conference room. So this has been quite a sabbatical for me. I've been sitting in my 3rd bedroom working about 9 hours a day for the last 8 weeks. And as you could imagine, most people would hate that, but I actually love it because I'm a workaholic and I love talking to all of you. So being on the phone all day, not being interrupted by anybody, not having to go to breakfast and lunch and cocktails and board meetings, even though I love that, and that was my whole career, I very much enjoyed this transition. I'd like to just say to everybody that's had hard times, which we all have had, I send my condolences for those people you've lost, my thanks to the people on the front line, and I appreciate everything that everybody has done to be able to get through these hard times. So I would just like to say that as Americans, we are extremely resilient, extremely generous, extremely empathetic. And I think everybody has come together more so than ever to help each other. And it's been really wonderful. So thank you all very much, personally, from me and to each other. We're in unprecedented, challenging times. And I send out a newsletter. So many of you have received my newsletter, but unfortunately we're inundated on the internet with information. So the information overload causes us to not be able to sit and read everything we get. I send out a quarterly newsletter. The quarterly newsletter is called Generations. I hope you get a chance to read it from cover to cover, because I only put in the Generations newsletter what I think is essential to share with my audience. There might be some pieces in there that don't apply to you, but I still think they're essential in the sense that they apply to many people. And I try to make them short, and I try to make them interesting. In our most recent special report, which we're going to be talking about today, we talked about the 3 critical steps to take to deal with your estate planning during this crisis. This was an opportunity to take inventory and to review what you currently have, to determine if the team that you've built is the right team for you, and to learn the tax law changes that have gone down over the last couple of years. So those are the 3 critical things we're going to be talking about today. Number 1 is, do you know what you have? Number 2 is, are you comfortable with your team? And are you comfortable with the information you've shared with your team and you've shared with your family? Or do you need to rebuild your team? And number 3, there's been many tax law changes since 2017, and then again in January, and then again in March. So there's been many changes, which we're going to discuss those changes in a very brief amount of time today. It's going to go by very quickly. This is an opportunity to do next level planning. We already have beautiful estate planning documents. Everything is in place, at least the last time we were in to see our lawyer. Now we have to take the next step and say, okay, I have great documents. What am I supposed to do with them? I barely understand them. I went to see Ed or Lisa or David or somebody else in Ed's office, or if you're not my client right now, your own attorney. And as a result, I have great documents, but I don't really know exactly what they say, and I don't really know if they're exactly what I want. I had only a couple days to fill out a questionnaire. Then we had a brief meeting, et cetera, et cetera. Many of you have been with me for 20 years, so you've been through this process before, but I would highly recommend that you go back to my Generations newsletter, find the estate planning self-evaluation that I sent out twice. I sent it out once last summer, and then I sent it out in the fall edition. And it's about a 10-question estate planning self-evaluation. If you score 10 out of 10, I would be shocked. But if you have any questions after going through the estate planning evaluation and you want to give us a call, please do. If you think you need to set an appointment, please do. Otherwise, most of the questions are self-explanatory. Today, we're going to be talking about the tools you need to take this to the next level. So what have we learned so far with the COVID situation? One thing we've learned is that we can stay connected even when we're not together. As Richard was saying, he's up in North Carolina and he's glad to be in my office right now and not have to travel. So we've been having wonderful client meetings on the telephone. They're shorter, they're efficient, they're more effective. So I don't plan on sleeping at the wheel. I've taken notes on everything that I would like to change based on what I've learned during this experience. And I have about 50 changes to make. So I don't sit down and take this thing lightly. One of the things that everybody did as soon as they got stuck at home was to do spring cleaning. I imagine your closets are all starting to be emptied out. I imagine you've gone through your family photos and you've thought about what do you need to do to downsize in the future. We did that in about 2 weeks. Afterwards, you're kind of looking at each other and going, okay, what's next? So what's next is take a look at your estate plan and see if everything's in order. It's a great deal of comfort, I would think it would be. It's a great deal of comfort to know that you've taken care of your family, you've taken care of your favorite charities, and that you sat down and really understood that your plan actually makes sense. Often people have a beautiful plan, but they don't follow through. They don't put their assets in the trust. They don't put their assets in joint name. They don't put designated beneficiaries. They have the wrong beneficiaries. The tax law changes and they don't change the beneficiaries when the tax law changed. Recently, there was a dramatic negative tax law change, Bruce, I can't right now, but I will. Bruce is going to get my self-evaluation and send it to you, the estate planning self-evaluation. We have the ability to chat, so thank you very much, Bruce. So, sorry, I got thrown off by that. I didn't know he can do that, so sorry. I'll get back on track. So where I was is not important. Where I'm going is important. One of the things that I'd like to say that was really fun about this experience is that we learned to Zoom with our family. We had an 80th birthday party where we gave presents out to our mother-in-law online, and she opened them up online. That was fantastic. We had people all over the country that would never come together. We had a funeral, unfortunately, but it was beautiful because we had sort of a ceremony where we all got to talk and say something nice. We had a graduation online, a bar mitzvah online, and many more things online. So it's been a very interesting experience. I come back to my point. So today, we're going to be talking about those 3 critical actions, starting with the first critical step, number 1 of the 3 steps, is to review your existing plan. Do you really know what it says? And make the necessary modifications. I started to say, and then I segued away, I apologize, that there's been a major negative change in the IRA law that your children, everybody but your spouse, has to take your IRA distributions after you die over 10 years. Previously, they were able to take the distributions over their entire lifetime, paying very little income tax because they only had to take out a very small amount each year and take it out over a very long time. Now they must take out your entire IRA in 10 years. So we've come up with many solutions on how to get around that dilemma, including in those solutions, just to segue to the end, including in the IRA distribution solutions, is setting up a charitable remainder trust to take care of your favorite charity and providing your children not with 10 years of payouts, but now we can get your children 20 years of tax favorable payouts. Instead of 10, they can pull it out over 20 years. And then the remaining balance goes to your favorite charity. So we have solutions to the recent change. So step number 1 is review your existing plan and make necessary modifications to deal with the current tax law changes. Step number 2 is to share your thoughts, your documents, your decisions, your wisdom, to share all that with your loved ones. It's very important at some point in your life. I usually discourage people to do this too early because you don't want them to dramatically change their work life knowing what's coming down the pike. But when you reach a certain age, I used to think the age was 75. Now 75 is sounding very young to me. But when I was much younger, I used to think the age was 75. At 75 or older, it's very important to share with your children what you've done so far. Also, your advisors usually do not talk to each other. I think it's essential that you share with your advisors who your other advisors are and try to have a collaborative meeting at least once a year or once every other year. You'll be surprised, while it may cost a little bit of time and money, wonderful things will come out of that. Great income tax savings and other asset protection things that will come out of it. So have that group advisor meeting at least once a year or once every other year. At a minimum, if you are going to have a family meeting, or even if you're not going to have a family meeting, I highly recommend that you put together what I call the Estate Planning Bible. And that is anywhere from 1 to 7 page document that tells us and tells your family where to go to get the information they're going to need to handle your estate. Who's your accountant? Who's your financial advisor? Who's your lawyer? What are we going to do with your digital assets? How do we get into your safe deposit box? Who should they call? What credit cards need to be canceled? So that's something that most people don't work on until they are very, very, very close to much older. but it's something you should think about. I also refer to that as follow the yellow brick road. And then finally, on that note, do you have a long-term plan, long-term care plan? Do you have a strategy as to what you're going to do if something should happen to you? Whoever thought that we would have to make dramatic changes in our financial situation, dramatic changes in our healthcare situation like this with the coronavirus? One day everything's fine, the next day the market takes tanks, and from a healthcare point of view, we're all running around scrambling to determine if everything's in good shape. And I would recommend that those of you that are online today, looking at your faces and looking at who's here, I think you're in good shape. Are you in great shape? Should you review your plan with your family? Should you map out a game plan for the future? Should you make modifications? Are the people that you selected so far, are the people that you selected in your documents truly competent? Are they truly competent to handle the burdensome job you've given them? Did you pick the right children? Did you pick 3 children because you couldn't decide, but now you realize that they're probably not going to get along? Who showed up the last time you went to the hospital? Who was there for you? Did you pick the right people? Please check that and let us know. This is an opportunity to take a second bite at the apple. So that covers critical step 1, the review, critical step 2, sharing your thoughts, wisdom with your team, with your family, getting organized for the future. And then step 3, which is the remaining portion of the presentation, is a little bit more of an in-depth dive. So bear with me. Step 3, stay prepared, stay informed. Whether you have an annual meeting with us and your team or every 3 years, you need to make sure that you stay on top of your game. We've started a concierge program. You can ask me about it later. I don't want to talk about that today. But for those people that are basically a little older or a little bit more, have situations that require a little bit more hand-holding or more complicated, we've created a concierge program to adapt to the current needs of our clients. Make sure your plan is flexible. A lot of times people will have an upfront cash gift to their children. What I saw the other day, which is just awful, a gentleman died 2 months ago, and he had 3 $250,000 upfront cash gifts. He had 3 $250,000 upfront cash gifts, and the remaining balance went to his new wife. Well, when his estate went down from 1.25 million, 30%, I'm not very good at math, but I actually am. That brings it down to, about 850,000. If you give 750 to 3 family members, that leaves $100,000 for your spouse. So avoid very large upfront cash gifts unless you know that your estate can handle the shrinking of the estate or the growth of the estate. Take a look at that and make sure that you don't have upfront cash gifts, upfront real estate gifts that are going to cause a great deal of problem on the residuary beneficiary or beneficiaries. Okie dokie, we're doing great. We're on time and we're doing great in terms of time-wise. So there's been some very significant tax law changes, and I've done reports on all of them, so many of you already know these. I'm going to go in reverse order. I'm going to do the most recent one first, and then I'll do the Secure Act, and then I'll do the tax law changes. I'm going to do them very quickly. I have written materials on all of this, so if you have any questions or you would like to discuss it further, just shoot me an email and we can dive into it. But in reverse order, the CARES Act just came out, as you all well know, and the CARES Act is an acronym for the Coronavirus Relief Act. And while it has some wonderful things in it, it has 1 or 2 things that are absolutely enormous. Number 1, you do not have to take a required minimum distribution this year from your IRA. You do not have to take a required minimum distribution this year from your IRA. What does that mean? You don't have to pay income taxes on money you don't need. You may want to use a Roth conversion. You may want to use a Roth conversion. You may want to think about how you're going to impact your charitable gifts for this year and next year, taking advantage of the fact that you do not have to take your required minimum distribution this year. That's super important. The next one, which is on that same path, is that you can give all of your money that you wish in a cash gift to charity just this year. Usually there was a limitation of 50% cash gifts. In the last tax law change, they moved it to 60% could be used for cash gifts against your adjusted gross income, and I'll explain that in a minute. Now you can use 100%. So if you have taxable income of $100,000 and you give away $100,000 of cash, you can wipe out your income tax this year. That is an interesting scenario. Most people are not financially able to do that, but it's an interesting scenario. Let's go back to the other tax relief under the CARES Act is magnificent. However, I don't think it will have application to all of you. And there's many articles written on it, and I wrote about it in my Last Generations newsletter. And you can get that information from me at any time by sending me an email or looking at your Last Generations newsletter. The next one going back is the one I just referred to earlier, and that is the Secure Act. The Secure Act is funny because who is it securing? It's an acronym that basically says we want Middle America to be able to retire and have enough income to support themselves for the rest of their life. So the way the Secure Act works is instead of having to pull your IRA out by April 1st after turning 70 and a half, they moved it out to 72. So you can not take your IRA out earlier. You can let it grow income tax free for a longer period of time, which will make your payments larger for the rest of your life because you have a shorter life expectancy by 2 years, etc. And therefore your payout's going to be larger, theoretically. Secondly, if you're working, you can continue contributing to your IRA beyond the old retirement date. Now you can continue to make contributions to your IRA forever. So if you do work until you're 75 years old, which I plan on doing, I'm 58 right now, and I plan on working till 75 because my grandfather, after working 3 jobs to get an accounting degree when he was 35 years old, worked as a CPA for 50 years, sold his practice when he was 85 years old, negotiated to keep the corner office, and went to the office every day to go to lunch with his cronies and read the Wall Street Journal and smoke cigars. That was not a good deal for his purchasers. So I promised myself and my staff when I was 35 years old that I would retire when I'm 75. Unfortunately, that timeline is getting closer and closer now that I'll be 59 this summer. So I just let you know in case you're wondering where I'm going. We also have 7 trust and estates attorneys. Every one of them is 4 years younger than the next. So our youngest is 26. I'm 58. We have a lot of excellent attorneys for you in the future. Back to the Secure Act. So it secured the middle income folks, the people that want to put more money away longer, who wanted to work till they were 75 and put more money away. That was wonderful. But the penalty, they had to pay for it. So now they force you to take all your IRA out in 10 years after you die, except for a spouse or a disabled child and a couple other exceptions. So we have to plan around that, because if your children have to take $1 million out in 10 years, that's $100,000 a year. They're going to pay a lot of income tax, and they're not going to have much left over at the end of the 10 years. And we don't want that. Who's going to lose out if your children get all that money and they spend it all in the next 10 years? Who's going to lose out? the grandchildren. We need to plan around that, make sure that there's something left over for the grandchildren, if you have grandchildren, and if that's your desire. Going back to 2017 for the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the big tax law change in 2017, the beginning of 18, the most important thing there is they took away most of our deductions. They gave us a really good gift, which is double the exemption. And I'm going to finish up on this part of the presentation so we can get to questions and answers. But what that means is that you probably don't itemize anymore. You don't have to bring that shoebox to your accountant to itemize your deductions. Instead, you just take what is given to you by the IRS. For a couple, that's $24,000. So you would need more than $24,000 to bother itemizing your deductions. They also took away many, many, many deductions. Like when you go to your accountant, it's no longer deductible if you're an individual. And the other miscellaneous itemized deductions were taken away. So they giveth and then they take away. But for most of you, having that standard deduction is wonderful. So when you put the money in the tray on Sundays, or you write the check for charity, you're probably not going to get a charitable deduction that you can use because you're probably not going to itemize. So what we recommend highly is that you bunch your deductions in 1 year. So for this year, before December, you would give $50,000 to the community foundation by way of example and get a really big deduction. So this year you would itemize because your deductions would not only have your normal deductions, but you would have that $50,000 gift to get a deduction. Then in the next year and possibly even the year after that, you would use the standard deduction so you don't have to itemize. And by using the standard deduction, you're taking full advantage of the IRS's gift. You've already got your deduction for charity. You've already set the money aside for charity. And now you call the community foundation and you say, I would like to give $250 to the YMCA because Josephine asked me to do that. So by doing that, they then send the money to the YMCA. You don't have to, everything's consolidated. So I very much encourage bunching. Talk to your accountant or talk to us about that. And as you all know, I can go on for at least 3 hours. I wanted to keep this very short. So I have just a couple more comments. What are your calls to action? Number one, do the self-audit. Please read our Generations newsletter. Please make plans, and when you make a plan, plan to review it on a regular basis. And the next thing that I want to talk about is just our slogan. Our slogan is where today's plans become tomorrow's legacy. What you're doing today isn't necessarily for you. It's to leave a legacy for your children, your loved ones. We deal with probates every day. They are messy. No matter what they say, they're always messy. So it's really important to get organized. It reduces the legal fees. It reduces the messiness. You'll still have some administration, but hopefully if you're organized, your family will save a lot of time and money. And finally, I want to take just 2 minutes to talk about Bruce Rosenblatt, one of my favorite people, because not only am I proud to be a guest speaker today for Bruce, but also I helped Bruce start his business down here, meaning Bruce came to me and said, I've got an idea. I'm helping people decide where to go move if they have to downsize. Should they go to assisted living? Should they go to a CCRC? Should they go to one where you pay as you go? And I used to do that in-house. So I was aware of the 7 facilities here in town. I was aware of all the Medicaid accepting facilities. And I ran out of steam. I ran out of capability. They just were too many. They're opening up every 6 months. So Bruce, for no charge, will help you have a plan for where you're going to go if you need to leave your home. He has friends in the business that help you with downsizing, appraisals. We did a seminar last year on what do you do to get ready to downsize. He's got all kinds of experts that he and I have developed over the years. And Bruce will take you to these facilities and help introduce you to places like our friend Pam Fultz here at Bentley Village V. But he'll take you to these facilities and he'll introduce you to some wonderful opportunities. These are no longer your parents' nursing homes. These are phenomenal places where people have unbelievable entertainment and camaraderie, fellowship. It's really, it's totally different than it was years ago. If you haven't opened your eyes to it, please think about it. Every one of my clients says they want to stay at home, but it costs over $20,000 a month to stay at home with round-the-clock care. So really have a plan. Please have a plan. On that note, Bruce, I'll turn it back to you and open it up for questions.
Well, and thank you, Ed. I truly appreciate it. And you know, just to add to that, you know, there's about 100 different senior living communities in this area, which kind of blows everybody's mind that there's 100 different places. And so I try to stay current with all of them. And even though we can't go visit them right now, but I do know about them. And I know, you know, I prior to the virus, I have stepped foot in every one of the different communities in this area. So with that, I want to open this up. I'm going to unmute everybody and feel free to ask Ed questions and he'll do his best to answer it. You know, Ed, your presentation was great. It was amazing that you were able to condense all that great information into about 30 minutes. So that was excellent. You know, I'm looking at this Zoom thing and it reminds me of the Brady Bunch. So it's kind of funny. So I'm going to unmute everybody, and if people have questions, just fire away at Ed.
So the next person can have that. What the hell else? So, and then it's something else. So.
Anybody?
Yeah. All right. Go ahead and shoot me that. Shoot me a 12-month one for $1.75 a month, and I'll get that thing going. And we'll go through next May, and then we'll see where I stand.
Bruce, why don't you mute it one more time?
If things are better than expected, back for an office, we'll just extend the virtual.
Because what happens is if you ask a question, your face pops up. So when you talk, you become the speaker and your face pops up and then they can hear you individually. Obviously, some people have telephone calls going on in the background. So you would have to individually mute yourself once he unmutes you if you're busy doing anything else. So I had fun doing that. I've only done this a couple times. I'll take all the tips later on. Feel free to criticize and suggest that I don't do this and I sit back here. I don't know. Like I said, when you're speaking publicly, you can walk around and dance and be funny. This is a little bit more serious for me until I figure out the nuances of it. But I thank you all very much for being here. This was a lot of fun. We will try to unmute it one more time just to see if there's any questions. But otherwise, I'll bid you all a wonderful day. Stay safe, stay healthy, wear sunscreen, drink lots of water, and cover up. My mask is off, and cover up. Bruce?
Thank you, Ed. Thank you very much. Thank you for being part of this. And again, next week, we're talking about the ABCs of CCRCs, and I would definitely recommend you be part of that if you're thinking about senior living at all. It's going to be a great presentation. I've added a lot of really good information. So thank you, Ed, very much. Thank you very much for your friendship. It's great. And all as well to you and Ellen as well. So
thank you very much.
Okay.